comfortable in having that conversation any time from now, and just get a sense of his takeaways as well. Was there Mr. Holeni at the summit? He joins us on the line. Mr. Holeni, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Chauke, and good evening to the listeners.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. At the conclusion of the BRICS, what are your immediate takeaways?
Well, I think what we've seen is a BRICS summit which never used to enjoy any fanfare. But at this point in time, we saw quite a lot of fanfare, which was enjoyed by the conference. Key to it is because one of the key presidents of the BRICS countries, President Putin, was not able to attend. But and most of us thought, that would put a damper onto the whole summit, as it were. But we saw a very well coordinated, successful summit. The key things is the sidelines of the discussions that happened between South Africa and China, which produced a good bilateral and headway, especially in the agricultural sector. We've also seen bilateral discussions with India as well, which have produced, much more results. We've seen bilaterals with Brazil as well. So there was quite a lot of economic discussions that were taking place. And if there ever was doubt that the BRICS countries are serious about trading among each other, this was put to bed.
Yes, okay. And so another issue there is the digital economy. I understand there was quite some conversation around that. Break that down for us, please.
Well, I think the big issue here is Brazil has advanced quite significantly, especially with the fintechs. We know as well in the South African setting that we have the over-concentration of the big banks in the financial services sector. There's not much room for smaller players to come in. So on that basis, the digital economy is one that has been looked at as one that can liberalize the trading space, especially for smaller businesses to be able to trade, to be able to borrow money, to be able to build a track record as they are building their businesses, and to access capital in a greater way. So the digital economy is one that we will see quite a lot of activity in, and we hope that the big banks will open up that space so that the smaller players from a fintech point of view play a role in growing their footprint.
Right, and we'll stay on that issue. Just when you're talking about the banks there, the BRICS Bank, the Development Bank. From this, what is being said? What are the takeaways related to it?
Well, the BRICS Bank has now also been strengthened in many ways because of the capital that is being made available for lending to other countries. And the big issue that is being spoken about is the infrastructure development, especially in the underdeveloped, countries. We've seen other countries coming in with aid packages, but the discussion really was around how do you strengthen the BRICS Bank so that it becomes a bank that supports, the countries much widely. And of course, there have been other countries that have expressed a desire to borrow from the NDB. However, not being part of the BRICS family, it was nearly impossible. But the capital that is flowing into the BRICS Bank is significant because most of it is to replace some of the aid that was coming from other countries that were seen to be pro-Western countries or pro-US in particular.
In terms of, even when we talk about the BRICS Bank, but also this idea of the new countries that will now be joining, which some of them have considerable financial muscle. How does the addition of these countries and their economies empower BRICS financially and economically?
Certainly, what will then happen is that, especially the Middle East countries, as we see the coming on board, we also see that the South America, Argentina has come on board, which is also a significant country. We also see Egypt as well as Ethiopia. But speaking of the countries that sit on a lot of oil with regards to the development. Iran, although the economy has been decimated with the war and sanctions that have been imposed against it, but Saudi Arabia and the UAE as a bloc, and the UAE comes with a number of emirates, Abu Dhabi being the largest one, Dubai the second largest, and all the other emirates that are there, which are sitting on tremendous oil wealth. So we're seeing a situation where if now that they are on board, there is capital that they need to then pay as part of the membership, but not only pay as just for the membership, but capitalize the bank, the BRICS Bank, that now they now belong to the BRICS family. However, that will become clearer in the new year because of their membership is effective from January next year. But the capital that will then be released from there will be significant and will definitely play a role with regards to balancing and growing the other countries that may be lagging behind, even Iran itself, despite the oil wealth that they sit under. But it changes the geopolitical game and certainly the geoeconomics of the whole world, because what we see with those countries coming on board is moving the GDP of the current 5 countries which were in the BRICS from 30% of GDP of the entire world to about 37% of the entire world's GDP. Now, that is significant because it's now edging towards 40%, and soon when it gets to half, it means that, the balance of trade and forces around the world, especially the economic muscle, has now shifted to the developing world. So the attention will now become on the developing world. But we expect a stronger BRICS Bank, we expect stronger capital flows, and we definitely expect trade that is going to take place. And remembering that the Middle Eastern countries are sitting on oil and they still have reserves, and on the other side there's green energy. So you can imagine the tussle that we'll be facing with regards to making sure that we move the agenda from high carbon to low carbon. So that could even open up a space where there's preferential pricing for purchasing of crude oil and so on.
The issue of currencies and trade, some of them are still to be discussed further.
Absolutely. So as we spoke when we were discussing the opening of the BRICS Summit, is that the issue of currencies is secondary. What was primary was to make sure that they admit the countries that they have admitted, and very strategic in a way that the countries have been admitted, because what you have is you want to essentially bring the deep capital into the fold before you can start talking about de-dollarization, single currency or trading currency, and all of those matters. And of course, once you have now have the muscle and have the countries that have signed up, then there's clarity with regards to how the capital markets are going to be redefined and how capital flows are going to be redefined. And knowing, for instance, that the oil backs the dollar in many ways now because of the fact that there's huge trade around oil in dollars around the world. So that you can see can take the wind off the sails of the dollar. And if countries which are now within the 11 countries now start talking about trading amongst themselves and can give each other the space to trade in each one's own currency with the understanding that there's enough countries to trade with, it makes it easier because each one of the currencies that each one of the countries have become attractive and can circulate amongst the different countries. So now they've built an ecosystem which would then allow the fact that, if you settle in renminbi, it's okay. Those renminbis are going to settle, for instance, something from India. The rupees, will then move on, the rubles and so on and so forth. So it becomes now an attractive trading platform for the members, and certainly for the ones who are still waiting in the wings would be waiting to also participate within this. So it legitimizes the currencies the countries, if I may put it in those words, above, the dollar or alongside where the dollar is.
Yeah, and I was thinking in terms of reactions from other countries, whether from the Western countries, from the US. Have we picked up anything yet?
I think at this point in time, the world is watching cautiously. And watching cautiously means that, I don't think many knew that the 6 countries were going to be admitted in the fashion that they would. And certainly there was perhaps, a speculation as to which countries would be put in there. So let's put it into context in terms of, how this happens. Ethiopia is in the Horn of Africa, alongside other 4 countries, which includes Eritrea, Djibouti, and Somalia, and so on. The Horn of Africa is a very troubled piece of geography in terms of lack of peace, and not so long. The U.S. used to pump a lot of donor funds into Ethiopia, but now that they've fallen off, and Ethiopia now is taking sides with the BRICS, countries. In other words, saying we're ditching you, U.S., and we are now participating in the BRICS with the rest of the countries. It starts to change now the dynamics of how the trade is going to flow within the continent. If you also look at, Egypt as well. So Egypt is a huge economy with tourism and a host of other things. And that, in a way, represents, Arab Africa. And that is a link that takes it into linking the likes of Tunisia and all those countries that are in the Arab, African side of things. On the other side, we've spoken about, the Middle East side, but significance as well is that Brazil is no longer standing alone, but it has an ally in Argentina, and even from a trading point of view.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Holeni. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Good evening.
It's macro.